Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Declan Richardson. I'm a Strategic Partnership Manager over at Kumo, and I welcome you to the first edition in our new webinar series that focuses on winning e-commerce strategies. The idea of this is that every month we'll be discussing a different dimension, an area of e-commerce where we explore the current landscape, challenges retailers are facing at the moment, insights that we've collated, and opportunities we think are out there today. With each new edition that we bring on, there'll be a guest partner that will cover their direct first-hand experience and expertise on our chosen topic. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Scurri's CEO and founder, Rory O'Connor, and we'll be discussing how to leverage delivery data to exceed customer expectations. Rory, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi, Declan. Delighted to be taking part in this webinar. I've got probably over 25 years experience in organising deliveries, way back when it was catalogues and then into the internet era. So really looking forward to kind of sharing any knowledge I have with you here now.
Great. So just to quickly touch on the agenda for this afternoon session, the first thing that we'll look at is the current landscape surrounding retailers. One second. Current landscape surrounding the fulfillment, logistics, and we'll also be touching on some of the challenges that retailers are facing, providing you with deeper insights, a retailer checklist, keys to success, and a Q&A session at the end. And for any of those that want to get involved and ask us questions whilst we're going through the webinar, simply provide their feedback. You feel free to use the Twitter hashtag #WinningEcomStrategies. So to cover our first point then in terms of current landscape, I don't think it's any secret that there is plenty of reports, white papers and statistics surrounding this space, but what we try to do here is highlight the overarching points that we feel have been very relevant over the last couple of years and some that are significant now in 2019. So to start off with, I guess would be a positive point. We've actually seen a reduction in failed deliveries now. So since 2014, the level of attempted deliveries has reduced from an average of 4.65% down to 2.93%, which might not necessarily seem like a lot on the face of it, but actually that amounts to a 36% improvement. And we believe a lot of that is down to the fact that we've introduced a lot of new technologies now into the market, and those are being adopted by retailers as well as couriers and logistics, warehousing companies, and I think this experience has to flow all the way through from a checkout point all the way to pick, packing and dispatching. And it's interesting to see that speed persists to be a really key part of this topic as well. So speed of deliveries. At the moment we can tell you that 60% of consumers want faster fulfillment, 40% don't want to wait more than 24 hours for their order, and 68% of retailers now offer next day delivery. Maybe that's the most significant aspect here. Is that the fact that nearly 3/4 of all UK retailers are offering this as part of their standard delivery proposition.
Yeah, I think, Declan, what you're seeing is that deliveries have become more of a battleground for retailers, so they're paying more attention to it, and that's why you're seeing that attempted deliveries have increased over that period.
Absolutely. And maybe this is a more obvious point in terms of thinking about the global explosion we're seeing in e-commerce. Naturally, there's just an organic uplift in volume for everywhere, but this stat here in terms of the 28% increase is really to do with next day deliveries. So UK carriers are expected to send out 580 million next day deliveries in 2018 compared to 450 million in 2016. So that's a 28% increase in just 2 years for next day deliveries in the UK. And I think what's interesting as well is that naturally with this added stress on the infrastructure, on carriers to be able to fulfill on that, there is a cost for getting it wrong. And we can see now that as of 2018, the total cost to consumers, retailers, carriers for failed deliveries totaled 1.6 billion.
Yeah, and it only gets harder because you can see everybody wants to have same day delivery now, so it just makes it that bit harder.
Yeah. So some of the challenges then we believe retailers are facing. So the first point we wanted to discuss is that 74% of consumers are likely to shop again with a specific retailer if they have a good delivery experience. And why is this a challenge? Well, the definition of a good delivery experience seems to change all the time, seems to be redefined and evolved. The goalposts are always moving and the bar is always set higher. And when you couple that with the fact that it's 5 times more expensive to attract new customers than retain current ones, it really amplifies the significance of making sure that the specific delivery part of the journey is handled correctly.
Yeah, and having a good delivery experience is contextual. It depends on what the customer wants, when they want it, and I suppose that's why having good data is so important.
Mm-hmm. So something that we believe then is that behind a great delivery service there is 4 fundamental pillars that we can quickly touch on here, and those are first time, right place, on time, and every time. So when we talk about first time, what's interesting there is when you're onboarding new customers onto your website, when they're carrying out a transaction for the first time, you're banking new data, delivery data on that customer. And you have to have the confidence that when you are sending those orders out for delivery, that data is correct, because that's a significant contributor to failed delivery. So everything from the actual checkout experience needs to be considered here in terms of what you can do to verify the addresses that are submitted and what safeguard measures can you put in place during the pick, pack and dispatching process. Right place, this is all about convenience for us. I think, as customers, we all shop online now, and I think we've all become more accustomed to be able to find delivery options that suit our lifestyle, that work around us, rather than it being maybe 5 or 10 years ago where we really had to work around what was available. So whether or not that's in the working environment or if that's whilst we're commuting or whilst we're at home. On time, maybe this is something that's more obvious, but what we're seeing today is that now able to order our products to a specific time period. So if it's an hour delivery or it's 2-hour delivery slot. Now, the point of this though is that you have to make sure you adhere to that. So if you're only finding that 90%, even 95% of the orders are coming through on time, then that's going to leave a lasting effect on the customer. Time is of essence here. And then finally, every time. Every time is probably the most obvious point here again, but it's really about trying to drive a level of consistency. You're only going to be ever as good as your last delivery.
Yeah, and the challenge here, of course, is these things are hard to balance, because to get the data right first time, and if you do it, some kind of validation at the checkout, you may force abandonment. So you've got to balance everything very carefully and understand what you're doing at each point along this journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this one I find particularly interesting, and I think quite topical at the moment, is all about how you try to sustain the brand image through the whole delivery process. And I think there's very much a split decision in terms of whether or not this is something that should be taken seriously, or it's just a case of you have to be a bit of a passenger. So, for example, high-end luxury brands, we see that there is a real emphasis on ensuring that the out-of-box experience, the first time they see their package, is something that represents the company accordingly. But you had some interesting insights, Rory, in terms of maybe the downsides of doing some of this.
Yeah, there's a challenge always to something like this, because if you highlight that you've got expensive goods in your parcel, it can be targeted within a network to fraud, theft, shrinkage, etc. So what we see sometimes is maybe an overlay, kind of a wrapper, and then a nice experience under that, and that's the reason you may have something like that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you said as well that it's an interesting thing that if you decide to brand up the packaging, if you make it stick out, then you expose yourself to all sorts of troubles of people targeting those products because they know what's included in them. So
exactly, and that's what you've got to balance.
Absolutely, yeah. So another key consideration here, and a challenge I think for a lot of retailers, is what you do when you're selling globally. A lot of what we're talking about here in terms of same day, next day delivery, convenience, is really when we're looking, I think, at our domestic markets, right? So where we have warehouses that are easy access to our customers that allow us to be able to do same day deliveries. But if you take an example of, say, a UK retailer that is trying to fulfill to the European market and they don't have a warehouse or multiple warehouses spread across Europe, then suddenly you can't offer that same experience. You have to rely on also the localized couriers to represent the quality of the delivery proposition your UK customers would be experienced to.
Yeah, and it's understanding, well, what are those kind of contextual differences in each market, because if you go to somewhere like Spain, COD, cash on delivery, is an important aspect. You have to have the data to be able to support that, and, you know, within your system. So yeah, you've got to think global, but act on a local basis is really important.
And from your experience, Rory, then, do you feel like localized couriers can significantly differ there in terms of, like, you know, the perception consumers in a certain market have? So, for example, I know, having lived in London and then moved across the island, if I'm ordering something in the UK, generally what will happen is that on-post will take on the delivery and be handed over to them. But have you seen that there is a better case to say, well, if you can find a carrier option that is able to support you from the start of the warehouse all the way through to the end, that you see a better result there and transparency with where the package is? Or?
No, I think it all depends on, you know, each retailer really understands, you know, what is, or needs to understand essentially what is the requirement for their customers. So in some instances, the right delivery option is the National Postal Service, and in a lot of cases they are the preferred supplier. So, but it depends really.
Of course. Okay, so now I'm going to hand over to Rory here to provide some of the deeper insights that he's prepared with his team.
So I think, you know, why does delivery matter? Well, I think first of all, you know, when you come to a website and you actually go to purchase, delivery can make a huge impact on abandonment at cart level. I think that's the first thing that retailers really need to understand. So people expect good delivery service, they expect choice, but you have to balance that with, if you offer it in a complex manner, you can have abandonment. And if you don't provide the right options, you can have abandonment. So that's probably one of the important things to consider. Second point, probably from this slide, is just think about the information. Most people, 9 out of 10 people, 90% of people want information to be kept updated about their delivery. So providing tracking information and good tracking information, apt and appropriate tracking information is really, really important. I think one of the most important things as a retailer you do have to consider every time you're thinking about delivery is the context, and there's probably 3 aspects to delivery. There's speed, convenience, and price. And you know, different consumers and the same consumer on different days think of these things in different ways. So if you don't need something quickly, you probably look at the price of delivery, and you're looking for a reasonable delivery, cheap delivery, free delivery, and you're prepared to wait some time for that. If you need something quickly, then you're probably prepared to pay for it, and something like Collect Plus in the UK, where you can pick it up at your local store, is a great offer, or dawdle at the local train station, or a locker. You know, it's convenience. And then, you know, speed is really important as well, so that sometimes you want it fast, you need to have it, you know, DHL, and, you know, the providers like that can provide the next morning in pre-8 a.m. delivery, and they, you know, having those options are really important for the retailer to understand, balancing off one against the other depending on the context. And of course, the cost of getting a delivery wrong is huge. I think, you know, if you've got a lost delivery, it can cost up to £150 per delivery. That's a huge amount. So you've got to replace it, you've got to kind of get it back out to the customer, etc. So getting deliveries wrong has a significant amount, and I think we looked previously in your slides, Declan, at the overall value to the economy, which is phenomenal.
Something I read as well recently that I thought was interesting is, because there's so much opportunity now in this space where, like I said, there is a lot of stress now on the mainstream couriers. We're actually seeing some new carriers come into this to try take advantage of the opportunity that's there. And subsequently, because they're new players and they don't necessarily adhere to the same level of quality, we're now seeing that that's contributing to the failed deliveries, is these guys that don't necessarily have the same experience and the same infrastructure behind them. And is that something you've seen firsthand yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's always horses for courses, and it depends on, you know, what you require. But yeah, you know, failed deliveries are a big problem, and you've got to consider that when you're choosing your carrier and the type of service that you're going to provide to your customer. Because getting it wrong you may save in the beginning, but at the end of the day, it can have a huge consequence. And I think these days, experience is everything. So we've gone from the days when I first ordered my first book on Amazon. You kind of just put the order in. You kind of guess it was going to arrive sometime.
Yeah.
You didn't know when it was going to arrive, and a couple of weeks later it came in through the post. Those days are gone. People expect that it's delivered on time, that it can be tracked, and experience is everything. Drones will be about experience. To tell your friends that it arrived by drone in the next while. So experience is key to everybody loves having great experience. So if you can extend that to the delivery, and that's where the physical thing happens in your purchase, making that experience great is a real opportunity to provide a linkage with your customer.
No, and I think that that's a real reflection then of how strong the infrastructure is at the moment. When it becomes more about the experience rather than the reliability of the service, I think just in human nature that as the bar gets raised, we broaden our horizons in terms of what we want to get from that proposition. And I think selfishly, consumers, we're just used to that at this point in time. We're used to having a better experience. And that's an interesting one, I think, when we think about deliveries, because it's purely about just getting something from A to B. So I think it's interesting what you said there.
Yeah, I think in terms of online shopper, the key kind of stat here is that most shoppers expect that they will get free delivery with no minimum spend. Now, what that means is that is putting the pressure on the delivery providers all the time, because the expectation is to get reasonably priced deliveries, and that is a challenge with the infrastructure. So how do you get something quite cheaply to people all over the country? Can you provide the same level of service that you do to someone close in London, to somebody in the Orkney Islands? And that certainly is a challenge. But that's the expectation that customers have set. Amazon drives those expectations by providing fantastic delivery. And the way to kind of achieve that in some ways is to use multiple providers, the providers that can actually give you different types of levels of service that suits the context of the delivery that you have to provide.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what we're talking about with the globalization piece as well, is that you'll see that there's different carrier leaders within each market, and it's great to leverage the fact that there's avenues you can go down now to be able to utilize all these carriers if you're looking at the multiple markets you're trying to fulfill to.
Yeah, and I think what we see is that customers that focus on delivery as either an experience or an opportunity to kind of augment the whole purchase, they tend to win. So one of our clients, Gusto, they're obsessive with kind of making sure that they have a simple and seamless kind of up-to-date delivery experience for their customer. And that involves investing a lot in delivery, but it also means that they reap the rewards. And everybody probably has seen their growth in recent times, and delivery plays part in that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember using Gusto before, and it puts in a new perspective. If they're going to be selling fresh quality produce, then I think the essence of trying to get that to you on time, regularly, timing is so critical there. For us, where we think about ordering a book or a T-shirt online, a day or two really doesn't matter too much in the grand scheme of things, but a day or two for someone like these guys, when you talk about food,
hours make difference. Exactly. So your processes and your systems have to be, absolutely top notch, and it is about obsessing over the details. So I suppose in terms of customer experience, in every purchase, experience is important in a purchase, and it is important in e-commerce. And there's probably three kind of things that you really need to do as a retailer. You probably need to analyze data, your tracking data, all your data to understand what is happening and where are those opportunities. I think there's an opportunity to communicate really well with your customers by using tracking information, providing that information. We saw previously that most customers want to be kept up to date, so there's a huge opportunity there. It's available, and use it with your customers. And bringing that on to another level, you have the opportunity with AI and bots to actually automate a lot of the processes. So if you get probably the first two right, you get your tracking set up, you get your kind of information in place, and you get your data right, you have an opportunity to leverage that with new technologies.
Yeah, certainly an interesting point, I think, in terms of AI. AI is such a buzzword at the moment, and it's been applied across so many different verticals, I'd say. And I think it's interesting for me personally because, I'd be coming into this new in terms of how AI in itself is optimizing on the delivery aspect of a retailer's overall proposition.
Yeah, but I mean, if we think AI is far away, we all have probably, a phone in our pocket that's working on, with some kind of an AI module. 9% of consumers are using some kind of smart voice at the moment. Gartner are forecasting that, AI is the way forward. And, even on our own website, we're kind of, on the Scurri website for our own customers, we're kind of using bots and kind of testing bots just in terms of customer service and kind of sales feedback and calls. So bots are here to stay. They provide a huge amount of advantage, and if we use them right, particularly in things like tracking data, which is the same kind of information all the time, it provides huge opportunities to leverage a good technology.
I remember we had a conversation there recently about the fact when you consider the type of inquiries that retailers get through their call centers as well, more often than not, it's always to do with the delivery. Where is it? It's lost. What's happened? Whereabouts? When should I expect to get it delivered? And I think you said that AI and bots can really play a part in, again, of trying to take some of the strain off of call centers and streamlining it.
Yeah, I think there's various stats going around, but about 50% of calls into most e-commerce merchants are about where is my order? There's been a challenge with my order. It's been delayed. I want to know where it is. So a lot of those are maybe reassuring customers because it's usually out there. It's on the way, and it's about just checking the data. And that's where AI and bots can actually be used.
Absolutely.
So I think, how would you get there? I mean, if you're thinking, how can I get to bots? Actually, there's kind of a few steps. I think, you've got to, first of all, get your data correct. And, there's lots of different kind of data sources that can be pulled together. And we see, the companies that are really excelling in this that we work with are using tools, business information and business intelligence tools, maybe like Periscope or those off-the-shelf BI tools, and they're plugging in their tracking data, they're plugging in their CRM kind of customer query data, pulling information from the carriers, kind of working out exceptions, and then they're able to kind of profile their customers, understand, if we change delivery to this group of customers, has it made any difference? Can we improve the service? This postcode, is something happening in this area? What can we do about it? And you get very granular very quick by applying these tools, and that can inform your delivery strategy, and you can have this continuous loop of kind of build, measure, learn, and improve your delivery strategy.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting now that we really start getting into understanding why data is so important. And what I found interesting as well is that there is definitely some examples of retailers out there that aren't collating the data the right way. If we're going to get ourselves in a position whereby you can utilize the data, you have to be sitting on a wealth of data in the first place to be able to run it through something like a BI tool to digest that, to spit out some reports and start forecasting on when might be optimal delivery times. What are the most frequent type of queries that we get? How can we improve on that? So it's really about widening the different sources you say for data, and then ensuring that you're collating that over time.
Yeah, and the great thing about modern kind of business intelligence tools is like it's able to cope with unstructured data. So where before you maybe had to clean it a lot, the system is actually able to self-clean and kind of grow in terms of understanding over a period of time. So yeah, the sooner you get in, the sooner you plug it in, and the sooner that you kind of get it up and running, the better.
No, correct point. So the next kind of section that we have is looking at, okay, well, what is the checklist then of some of the things that we talked about that retailers should be taking away from this?
Yeah, well, I think first thing is, we spoke, earlier on about context. The really important thing is to understand the customer and your delivery strategy. So take it from not, I have to get this out of here to, a location, but what does the customer need? So you need to think about the customer and the context of how a customer purchases in when you're building up your delivery strategy. There's the three elements that's always there. So speed, price and convenience. You've got to balance them off. You've got to understand that different customers expect those in different ways at different times. So you've always got to think about speed, price and convenience. The cost of delivery fails, don't underestimate that. So, you might see somebody that can actually do it for you cheaply, or, I can get this out kind of very, very reasonably. But if it fails, and if you can't up all the fails, have you really made a saving by doing that in the long run? I think that's important to understand. Collecting data, really important. We just spoke about it a minute ago, about collecting data, and you can start off by just using tracking, but also kind of putting it somewhere that you can actually use it and starting to invest in business intelligence. It's really important.
I suppose that'd be working closely with the carriers. Then you work that you utilise to carry out your fulfillment, making sure that you've got visibility and access to the data.
Yeah, I mean, most of the carriers have tracking, and if you're using track services, you're going to get tracking information, taking that information and using it in your BI tools. Yeah, that's the way forward. And then I think, just think about innovation on an ongoing basis to future-proof your business.
And then the key to success.
Yeah, I mean, operational efficiency. I mean, if you put in good systems, you're going to end up with operational efficiency. And I think what we're seeing is that, carrier automation and operational efficiency is key. So there are opportunities to make your process very efficient. You've got to have a great understanding of your customer. It's really important. By doing that, I think there's opportunities to reduce the customer queries and complaints, because you can understand what your customers needs. You provide them with the right service at the right time. You're going to probably bring that down in the first place. That increases, I suppose, your margins and revenues, because we see things like LTV. You don't have to acquire new customers. You can continue to kind of sell to the existing customers because they've had a happy experience when they've come to your site, and their delivery is part of that experience. So that's really important. Your processes and decisions, kind of using data to kind of insight to kind of drive that rather than making guesses. So, if we provide a cheaper delivery service, does that improve LTV? Or does it decrease it? And by using analysis, you can actually get answers to those types of questions. And then overall, I suppose, by improving your delivery, we see it all the time that things like lifetime value and NPS scores increase. We see FIFO scores increase, Trustpilot scores increase. And therefore, immediately when a customer comes on, looks and says, hey, this has got a great Trustpilot score, and I'm going to purchase off this site rather than the one that doesn't. So there are, immediate wins.
I agree. I think trust is more significant now than ever before. Now that there's just competition from every aspect, every part of the world, I think you have to really nurture the existing customers that you have. So trust absolutely is probably a key driver there that we need to be considering. Right, so conscious of time then, we're going to move on to the Q&A session. I think we've only really got time then for one then, Rory, but there's one here that I found particularly interesting that I'd love to hear your opinion on then. So what do you predict is going to happen in the future for deliveries? We talked a bit about AI, we talked about drones for a second there, but how would you summarize it in a few lines?
Yeah, I think, everybody talks about drones, and, there's some very interesting work even going on in Dublin at the moment around drones. But, I think the challenge with drones is there's a lot of regulatory and even just infrastructural issues about, how do you get drones delivered to my house? Where are they going to put it? Who's going to collect it, etc. But I think, it provides an amazing experience. So there are going to be people who actually are going to be interested in it. And I think you're definitely going to see some drone technology and drone deliveries emerging over the next period of time. I think what's probably much more interesting in the kind of shorter term is that the carriers have seen that, providing an experience to the consumers is really important. And you see a lot more apps coming out where they kind of are trying to battle for the kind of win of the customer in terms of recognizing a brand for delivery. So the bigger brands are trying to kind of reinforce their brand with the consumer and look for the consumer to choose their brand as the delivery brand. So I think you're going to see a lot more, I think, battles with the brands, with the delivery brands over the next period of time. And I think that's probably where we're going to see a lot of innovation over the next while.
Great. Well, that's plenty of food for thought there, and I think that's about all we've got time for. So for those listening, if you do have any questions that you'd still like to ask us, look, feel free to do that on Twitter using the hashtag winning ecom strategies, and we can get back to you throughout the afternoon. Rory, really pleasure having you on. Thanks for joining us. And again, in terms of the next installation, we'll be doing another webinar in April. I'm not too sure the date yet, so keep an eye out on our website, and we'll be discussing personalization. So, Rory, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Declan, thanks very much.
Thanks, Neil.